One of the questions I often get during APSIs or other workshops is how do I structure my classes? So I'm going to go over how I structure my classes, and I'm constantly adapting and changing as my students change, as how we learn, how students learn, how people learn, how technology's changed over the years. So you will design your class based on your students, based on your community, your school, and the resources that you have. All right, so going on to the next slide. So who do I teach? I teach 11th and 12th grades in AP Environmental Science. In California, we have large classes, so I max at 36 in a class, and I have 5 sections. So I can max at 180, but I usually don't. My afternoon classes aren't usually as full. So I usually teach about 160 AP Environmental Science students a year. In my school, placement is decent. Most students are ready. There's always some that aren't, and I work with them as best as I can. I do a lot of scaffolding because, especially the ones that are almost ready, I can do a lot with them to get them to be successful in the class through a lot of differentiation and scaffolding. For about a third of my students, this is their first AP class they've ever taken, even as a senior. And for a lot of my seniors, this is their first and only AP class they'll take in high school. So it's really a wonderful opportunity for them to learn the rigor of a college class. And then for other students, they've taken a lot of APs. They're taking multiple APs. For a lot of my juniors, they usually take about 3 or 4 APs, but they haven't necessarily taken any before. I had one student last year who was taking 7 AP classes. We offer 7 periods a day. Teachers teach either a 1 through 6 or 2 through 7 periods, and juniors and seniors can take 4 or 5 classes, but this senior was taking 7 classes, so he had them all as AP. So that is actually very unusual. I am on a traditional calendar, so when I say one day, it's I teach Monday through Friday, 55-minute periods a day, and we start in early August. That gives you the context. So when I talk about a reading quiz per day, you'll know that I see my students every day. If your block schedule, obviously you have to adjust for that. So a few years ago, I decided to flip my class. And so content, all of the essential knowledge, for the most part is done at home, except for really hard things. So in Bloom's taxonomy, this is one of the reasons why I flipped in this diagram. I should have put the credit here. It's from a flipped learning website. So the easy stuff is at home. So content is really the easy stuff. Skills are harder and they're in class. So remembering and understanding are done at home via lecture video. And then these are things that we do in class because they're harder, and I have the time to do it because I flip my class. So what I normally do is I assign a reading section of the book, like 5.1 in the book, along with little mini corresponding ed puzzles. About every 2 nights, I give a reading quiz the next day, and then notes are done via sticky note in their books while watching my lecture videos at home on ed puzzle. I'll kind of go a little bit more of the details of that. So let's talk about my reading quizzes. So I account that the students read, so they're going to get content in at least 2 different ways. The first way they're going to get content is through my sticky note lectures. So they sticky note their books, and we'll go over that this week as well. Under content ideas, I'll explain the sticky note method. So they watch these ed puzzle videos of me sticky noting my book, and they copy the sticky notes onto their book. And so it's a kinesthetic act of writing, tearing off, sticking on their own page. Then the next night, after I assign sticky note videos, then they have to read the section of their book with a corresponding little mini videos. And then They'll either have a reading quiz the next day. If it's a long or difficult section of the book, I'll do a reading quiz per section. But normally I'll do about a reading quiz every 2 sections. And when I do it that way, they take the reading quizzes more seriously because it's 2 sections and they prepare for them more. It's kind of a psychological thing for them. If you'll notice, this is a sample reading question. It is very low level. It's just a reading check. It's to see if they read. Their exams have the higher level questions that they might see on their AP test. The reading quizzes are open book, open note because at this point in time, I do not expect them to have memorized the information after just reading it one night or copying down the notes. So it is just a reading check, and if they read, they should do well on the quiz. If they read ahead of time, a lot of kids, they wing it, they skim, they don't do well on the reading quizzes because I time them about 12 questions in 7 minutes, and there's not enough time to flip through the book and look up the answers if you didn't read ahead of time. So I use my book's online mastering platform called Mastering for Reading Quizzes. There are a lot of other sites you can use, from Quizlet to Quizzes to Quizegg. That's an old one. But Google Forms, you can also do reading quiz on Google Forms to create your reading quizzes. I just happen to have them through my book's online portal. And not all books have a decent online reading quiz portal where the kids make an account and it tracks their scores. Some of the books have quizzes, but they are for practice. They don't actually report to you the kids' scores. So the book I use is WithGot, and it does. If I wasn't using that book, I would probably create my quizzes on Google Forms. So my scores count as a quiz and go into exam and quiz category. Oh, and they're randomized too. So the questions don't go in order of the book. So it's another way for me to force the kids to read the book at home. All right. One thing I use heavily is Edpuzzle. So I use Edpuzzles for my sticky note lectures. My sticky note lectures usually last about 30 to 40 minutes per chapter. You can see there's a picture here of me recording my sticky note lecture. So this is my book with sticky notes, and I just put my iPad up on a box and I press record and I talk, and they make their books match my book. The reason I do this instead of having them sticky note on their own is because they don't know what's important at this point in time. They don't know what sections they can skip in the book because there's some pages for things they don't even need to know. So I'm not going to make them read, memorize, or sticky note those sections for things that they don't need to know. Okay, so one night has about 30 to 40 minutes of me lecturing on sticky notes on Edpuzzle, and I break it down into like 15-minute segments. So they'll get 2 or 3 little videos about 15 minutes long. They pause and sticky note, they'll have to pause several times because I talk faster than they can write. But that's the beauty of doing a flipped classroom, is that you can pause and carry on when they're ready to go. All right, then let's say that's a Monday night. Then the next night, Tuesday night, I might assign section chapter 5. So I might do chapter 5 sticky notes Monday. Then the kids the next night on Tuesday, they would need to read section 5.1 in their book. And then they will have 2 to 4 other little Edpuzzles that are like little YouTube videos that kind of explain the topic. And you have a list of all of those YouTube Edpuzzles that I've already created questions for. So you have links to all of those in the Google Drive. Then about every 2 sections, there's a reading quiz the next day after they're assigned. Some students don't actually read and they just watch the Edpuzzles, and they don't usually score well because some of the reading questions, so about half the reading questions come from the book and about half are reinforced, so they're the book and the Edpuzzles, but there's not enough mini videos to really reinforce everything that's in the book, so students learn quick enough that they need to read their books. So that's how I use Edpuzzle. So With a flipped classroom, my harder content still is done in class. So there are some things that are really hard to understand from just reading the book, like the nitrogen cycle. Actually, trophic levels and energy loss is actually really hard too. And drawing food webs is surprisingly very hard for them. So we do diagram notes in class, we do doodle notes, sketch notes, we do charts in class, we do chalk drawings in class. So the harder content is done also in class. Okay, and then most of my class time is on building skills. So we spend a lot of time in lab because we can. The kids answer lab questions in groups. So I talk to the kids when I tell them that I flip, but that does not mean you have more homework. In fact, some kids say they have less homework because some kids write notes really fast, and if they do it at home, then it's a lot quicker than doing it in class. I often remind them that if we do a lab that lasts one day, the next day they have the whole period in their groups to discuss the questions, do their lab questions and conclusion in class. And I tell them this would normally be homework, but because we flip, this is done in class. And so this is skill building. My lab scores are high, and it's because they help each other and they really understand the concepts because they help each other in class. And that's okay with me. I don't mind grade inflation on labs because as I walk around, they really truly are talking about the questions, helping each other with the questions to get really good scores. We do a lot of math in class time once a week at the beginning of the year, maybe once every 2 weeks toward the second semester when we go a lot quicker through the curriculum second semester. So math used to always be homework, but then when kids had trouble, they were stuck at home. So now all the math that we do is in class. Exams are in class, and then we also have time for peer grading. So that is actually skill building, learning how to grade an FRQ means that they'll write FRQs better. We do text analysis for articles in class, and that prevents cheating as well. And then we do a lot of data analysis in class. We have the time to spend on a lot of data analysis because of doing content at home. Okay, so I also collect binders. So one of the things that I do is I collect binders. This is the artwork. One of my students was a really good artist, and she did this as the cover of her binder. I do binders for several reasons. I have the kids collect all of their handouts. So this is labs and diagrams and charts because it's a study tool for the AP test. So most notes are in their books as sticky notes. So it's not really to collect their notes, it's to collect all the other things. They leave their binders at home except for 3 times a year. When we grade them in class, it takes about 15 minutes to grade them. So this is not a thing where I'm collecting and spending hours and hours grading their binders. It's just to see if they collected. I'm not actually grading the items in their binders. They can put the item in blank. So if they never even did it, then they can even put it in blank and they get credit for at least having it in their binder. All right. Exams. So how I do exams is this is not my classroom, by the way, this is a stock photo. I give an exam about every 2 chapters. I spend 1 day before the exam reviewing, usually with a game, if I have time, or at least half the period reviewing. I also do some homework review. I assign the Bozeman Science Ed puzzles as review. They're not good for flip learning. Even Paul Anderson, who developed the Bozeman Science Ed puzzles, said that his videos are not good for initial learning because they go too fast. And then I also, in my mastering program through the WithGot textbook, they have something called coaching assignments, which is great review for students. So they're doing homework to review for a couple nights before the test, and then 1 day of class time to review, and about every 2 chapters. So if I was to go by the order of the CED, I would give 1 exam per unit, except for units 5 and 8 that are very long. I would split and give 2 exams in those chapters.